Catholic Church under serious drama as priests involved in cases of sexual harassment. Is the African society ready to accept gay rights into their culture? Cultural tension increases as the LGBTQ movement fights for their rights. With the increasing cases of absent fathers, could Kenya be turning into a fatherless nation? Justice versus power money. How fair is the Kenyan justice system? Live from I24 TV Newsroom, my name is Yar Ajak Deng and this is the Spets News. We welcome all our viewers from Nairobi and across the world. We shall be with you for the next 30 minutes. Be sure to stay tuned for the latest updates. And on to our big question of the day, we're asking, do you think Catholic priests should be allowed to marry? I repeat again, do you think Catholic priests should be allowed to marry? You can join this conversation on our social media handles at ITV24 on Facebook and Twitter. You can also tag me along at Yar Ajak Deng. The hashtag is Spets News. Let me know your thoughts, your views, your opinion on this interesting topic. And on to our fast developing story of the day. Celibacy is a common teaching for the Catholic Church, especially among the priests. But the increasing cases of sexual harassment by the priest on the nuns spells a profound contradiction on these teachings. Our correspondent Beth Gaishugi has the latest on this.
The church is considered to be a moral place and a place to teach the society on wrongs and rights. But recently, the church has been rocked by thousands of reports of sexual abuse by priests and accusations of cover-ups by senior clergy around the world. These cases have put Pope Francis under serious pressure to provide leadership and generate workable solutions to curb this crisis that has engulfed the church in recent years. Reporting for Spects News, I am Beth Gaishugi.
To my opinion, I can say it is high time for the Catholics to allow their leaders to marry, because the events which we have been hearing is actually not good as part of the church.
Mimi naona waruhusiwe. Because in most cases unapata ama church leaders ambao ni Catholic priests wanapata engage kwa child molesting. The same people ambao wanapakwa na sisi wanapata the right direction. So mimi I see any point. It's better to come out clean. Itakuwa ni fine hivi.
I think they should. I think society has changed for a very long time. You're no longer what we were. Plus,
Beth, welcome on board. Tell us, how are people reacting, especially the fact that these are religious leaders who should be looked up to in our society?
To say the least, people are shocked. People are shocked about these kind of revelations, because considering that the church is where you go, you trust the priest or the church leaders to guide you, to nurture you spiritually. These are the people you disclose to when you are going through issues, whether it is your marriage, your family, whatever kind of issues you are going through. These are the people that you go to talk to, because you trust them to guide you the good way, you know. And children, we take our children to church to be nurtured and to grow spiritually. That's where their morality is actually supposed to be nurtured from that young age. So when something like this happens in the church, it causes a lot of controversy, and of course people start questioning even the motive. What we even take our children? Why should we take our children to church and trust them to people who turn against them and, you know, hurt them in such ways? So yeah, people are more or less shocked, yeah, actually more shocked than anything else, because this is something that is very, very sensitive and controversial. Yeah.
So do you think this is a way of actually chasing people away from joining the convent?
The issue of joining the convent, whether it's sisters or nuns, I would say that's a calling, you know. You don't join it. It's not like a career. You decide today I want to be a journalist, or tomorrow I want to be a teacher. Or that's a calling. If you're not called to serve, you cannot join convent. So that comes from the heart. So I don't think something like this could, yes, it could cause some people to question themselves. Those who want to join can feel are not safe, and they can be skeptical about it. But when you have that calling in you to go to serve as a nun, or as a whichever level you want to join to serve in the convent, I think people will still join. But now it only creates that tension that you're going there, but you are scared for your life, or for whatever might happen to you. But I think that calling, if it is in you, you're joining it.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Joining us live in our studio is Reverend Mutinda Musimi, a pastor and also the Dean of Students at Daystar University. Welcome on board, Reverend Mutinda Musimi. Now, Reverend, please tell us, how do you react, or what is your take on these increasing cases of sexual harassment, especially from religious leaders like the priest in the Catholic Church?
It's a complicated matter. Celibacy should be by choice. When you read Matthew chapter 19, and when you read 1 Corinthians chapter 7, in fact, Paul indicates about 40 verses speaking about celibacy. And the teaching is that it should be by choice. So, yes, there are many bad things that have been happening. And I don't want to blame every priest and every nun for this, but there's a possibility that celibacy is contributing to this. Now, what does the Bible teach about celibacy? One, it should be by choice. Secondly, it should be for the purposes of serving God, that they are dedicated to serving God. Paul says, how I wish that all of you are like me, that is staying celibate. But he goes on to say, because there's so much temptation, it is better for each person to get married. So it is sad that those who are devoted to celibacy, and once more to just say a little about this, celibacy has to do with staying unmarried by choice, but it also has the other aspect of abstaining from sex.
I think it is time that the Catholic Church has a deep discussion. I think I cannot prescribe for the Catholic Church, depending on where they're coming from and some of the rules that they have to run their church or their denomination. But it is time to have a conversation, because again, if we base things on the things we do and the institutionalization of our conduct within those institutions, we need to consider, if we are talking about the Christian faith, we need to consider that Christian faith is based on the Bible. And the Apostle Paul says quite directly that if you find that you're burning with desires, that it is time to get married. And so we can insist on remaining single, because he also says that to do ministry, and I guess that is where they get their theology from, to do ministry effectively and single-focusedly, if there's such a word, then marriage is put to one side so that you concentrate on it. But in the very, very same vein, the very same breath, he says, but if your body is running up with desire, it is best that you get married so that you take care of it. So it really is time for them to have a deeper look at some of these theological ramifications.
Okay, so Reverend Mutinda, do you think the church teachings on sexual purity, especially among the priests, is contributing to these increasing cases?
I think so. You know, when you read what Jesus is saying in Matthew, he says that some people are eunuchs because they were made eunuchs. Others are eunuchs by choice. Now the Bible term for a eunuch is somebody, sorry to use strong terms, but is a male who by choice was castrated, meaning then that this would reduce the natural hormonal exchange in his body, therefore reduce on the desires that he would have for women. And especially this was done so that they could take care of the queens and the princesses, and the king would be sure they are not going to hurt those females. So if we have a priest who has always feelings with himself, definitely that has to be managed. And I don't doubt the possibility that God can help them to manage that. But if they are not careful, it is so easy for them to be lured into sin. And that's why Paul is saying, if one cannot withstand this temptation, then it is better for them to get married. And therefore I would say, possibly, it would be better to allow them to serve as priests, but also to allow the option of getting married, because that will definitely reduce on these cases. Now, just a caveat to this. Not every person who is married remains faithful. And even married people can occasionally get involved in such behavior. But at least the numbers are lower because they have a wife somewhere, they have a husband somewhere. They don't need to go looking for other people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Reverend Mutinda Musimi, for joining us in our studio. And on to our second developing story of the day. While majority of the African countries are yet to accept the LGBTQ movement, South Africa and other Southern African countries have already legalized gay rights. Kenya is among the African countries that is yet to accept this movement, following a court denial on the gay rights. Our reporter Doreen Wabere has the latest on this.
The African culture is set on different norms, values, and beliefs that guide them. But with the westernization of the African countries, there has been a lot of cultural integration with the world. The discussion on the LGBTQ movement is a discussion that many African countries are yet to openly talk about. With countries like Kenya, which criminalizes same-sex activity, will remain intact following a High Court ruling which rejected a petition calling for the discriminalization of homosexuality in the country. Kenya's High Court upheld a law banning gay sex, keeping same-sex relation punishable by 14 years in jail in the East African nation. This ruling brought many people in the movement of the streets to fight for their rights.
The opinion of lesbianism and gayism should not be legalized because it's not even empirically proved.
It has been said by many people that God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Adam.
To me, it's a sin.
God himself has said that it is a man and a woman, not a man and a man or a woman and a woman.
It's not something right,
So I think it's something that should never be accepted in this country.
Yeah, to me it's a big no. It shouldn't be legalized.
I know it's not biblical, but at some point we have to come to think about it like, okay, the way you prefer men, there's someone who just prefers ladies, there's someone who just prefers men. So it's just nature. You see, someone just found themselves like, I'm a woman and I prefer another woman. I'm a man, I prefer another man. So I think it should be legalized.
With the LGBTQ community struggling to gain identity, the question is, are our African communities willing and ready to accept them? Reporting for Specs News, my name is Doreen.
Joining us live in our studio now is Reverend Cyprian Yobera, an Anglican priest who will be shining more lights on the topic of LGBTQ in Kenya. Welcome on board, Reverend Cyprian Yobera. Now, Reverend, tell us, what is your take on this LGBTQ movement, considering that this is something that is so different from our African culture?
Well, for me, first of all, it shouldn't even be a movement, because we are talking about sexuality. And sexuality has always been, with any generation, any culture, anywhere, sexuality is included in culture. But our African culture, sexuality has a secret side to it. And for me, secrecy in that kind of relationship kind of area, especially the intimacy in relationship, is also intimacy. Intimacy comes from that secrecy. And therefore, the way I feel that it is other cultures that are pressing in, the Western culture especially, pressing into us and bringing a more open sexuality, which just doesn't fit into our African culture. And therefore, my first thing is that it is, it has been a secret thing between two people and being intimate with one another that really solidifies their relationship. But secondly, so now when it is brought to the level of a movement, how can sexuality be a movement? Do heterosexual people should they also have a movement? And why should they, would be my question. So I think that it should remain as handled in the secrecy of the relationships, so that it deepens intimacy. And that's my take on it.
Okay, so Reverend Cyprian, do you think environment that, like the learning institutions, could be contributing to the high increasing numbers of LGBTQ in Kenya?
Yeah, I think the exposure, I think the main thing is exposure. So within the schools, exposure is greater because people share what they have experienced. So it's like the sum total of what everyone has accumulated is sort of spread within institutional settings. And therefore, yeah, you could say that institutions are part of spreading this, as it were, new culture. We hope, as Africans, I really hope that we will not allow it to be as part of our culture, because you're saying let's get rid of aspects of our culture and embrace culture that is coming in. I think we should also have impact on the cultures in the world, and this is one of those areas that I think we should contribute to the rest of the world and say sexuality is a private thing, it's an intimate thing, it will build intimacy, and intimacy is one thing that is missing in society today when we are so open about these things.
Okay. And on to our last question, do you think gay rights should be legalized in Kenya?
No, I mean, from what I've said, of course, I don't see why we should legalize, and I would ask myself, what are we legalizing? So if we go back to the theme, my theme of secrecy, what are we legalizing there? And that is, I think we mix the signals. As Kenyans, as Africans, as we hear the West coming and impressing things on us, but we mix the signals. We mix socialization and institutionalization of things into also, as it were, sexuality in this particular aspect, and also the religious things. We should be careful to separate some things. So when you're saying my rights to do what? And I think that question needs to be answered. Because for me, some of the people that are involved in gayism and the LGBTQ movement, I feel that we are coming from a point of view where we are struggling with really accepting our identity. It's an identity problem as part of it. And when somebody is having an identity problem or an identity crisis, what they need is to understand themselves, and that is done gently. That's done one-on-one, just like I said earlier, where these things are handled in secret, one-on-one, so that an individual's emotions may be taken into consideration, and where they are at with whether they call it a problem or a strength, they can be helped by a counselor to understand themselves. But when you come and line up as a movement, then we lose that intimacy of personal experiences with such deep matters.
Thank you so much for joining us in our studio, Reverend Cyprian Yobera. And moving on to our third developing story of the day, as Kenya celebrated Father's Day this year, many people had nothing to celebrate. Kenya has recorded high number of single mothers over the recent years, with men missing in action. Could this be a societal crisis? Our reporter has the latest on this.
The common words on the streets on gender relations are the frustrations of the boy child as a reaction to the empowerment of the girl child, but there's little about the crisis of fatherless nations. Worldwide statistics state that the absence of fathers has a profound effect on the psychological development of boy child. The question of fatherhood has received extensive attention in North America and Western Europe, recognizing fatherhood as a serious social problem and addressed it as a matter of policy. In Kenya, the value of fatherhood has continued to depreciate, so much that fathers have been reduced to sperm donors, cash dispensers, and mere figureheads in homes. A culture of checking out and abandoning responsibility became normalized, showing up in the rise of deadbeat fathers.
It's because of lack of job. That's why single mothers wamekuwa wengi. Wanaume vile wanakosa kazi, so inabidi wachupe shughuli waweze kuondoka.
And why do you think many fathers are escaping their responsibilities of taking care of their children?
Because when you don't have a job, you don't have money.
Yeah, it would have been better to grow up with my father. Maybe you could have felt that satisfaction of having your dad in your life and him talking to me about men or boys or this is how it is. But I can say my grandpa kind of filled that gap, but not in a way like a father would. So yeah, and sometimes it hurts when you mention him and he's not in the picture, so yes.
Besides financial support, fathers play a very big role in the lives of their children by providing emotional and psychological support, also instilling different values such as discipline and hard working in their children. But with the increasing rates of deadbeat dads in the country, where are we headed? Reporting for Specs News, my name is Pamela Andrew.
Now joining us live in our studio is Madam Susan Boto, a psychologist profession and the counselor for Daystar University. Welcome on board, Madam Susan. Now, Madam Susan, please tell us, what is your take on the increasing number of absent fathers?
Yeah, absentee parents is a phenomenon that is really growing in our country, or it is really big in our country. Statistics tell us that a lot of young people right now, or a lot of children, are either in single parent families or orphaned. So that is an alarming situation. And I think most of the times it's the fathers who tend to be absent. Of course, for them, they don't have that immediate dependency that the child has, like for a mother, because the child has to breastfeed, or the child is also, carried through term to pregnancy and then needs to breastfeed. So the mother is always very vital. So you don't find a lot of mothers having the option of being absent. But for the fathers, most of them, since they don't have that primary obligation of rearing children, then it is easy for them to be absent. What has contributed to this? I think in our society today, we say that we are in this modern era, and because of the modern era, there's a lot that comes with it. We find that most of our men are working, and some of them are working far and wide. You'll find somebody is working in Nairobi, he has a family back in Kisumu, and so because of distance being a challenge, you will realize that they have, yes, they have a wife and children at home, but they are putting up with somebody else even in Nairobi. Or sometimes you have people in the military, they are sent into other countries, and so they stay there for very long periods of time, forcing them to leave their wives and children alone, and some of them end up dying in those countries, and so they are not able to come back to their families. Another phenomenon in this modern era is the mpango wa kando syndrome, or sometimes they say that men are polygamous. It's not been scientifically proven, but that is also a phenomenon that is also causing, that means that a man is in a relationship with like 3 or 4 women, but he's not really committed to any of them, and with all of them he has children with them. So that means that there are a lot of children who are growing up, with single parents. Another phenomena is also a lot of young girls getting pregnant out of wedlock. Either they have been impregnated by an older man, or even if it's their teenage counterparts. But you find that these men, whether it's the teenagers or somebody who took advantage of them, are not willing to take up the parenting role. So that leaves the girl or the lady to raise up the child on their own. So I think those are some of the things that are contributing to a lot of single parenthood situations in our country today. Yeah,
so from a
of course the immediate
what are some of the
immediate
effects or
issues that they are
challenges
not
that a
able
child
to
who
have
grows
is
up
they don't have
without
that
their father?
attachment with their father. They don't have that emotional attachment and role modeling of a father. We're told that fathers help to give a sense of protection and also a sense of identity to a child and to a family. So these children are growing up with an identity crisis. They don't know where they came from. They don't know who their father is. They grow up with a lot of low self-esteem issues because of not knowing where their dads are. They feel like other children are more advantaged than them, that they do not benefit from everything else that everyone is benefiting from, and so that can give them a lot of self-esteem issues. There's also the economic challenge because it's a single parent family. That means it's only one parent who is providing, and we are still in Africa and the third world countries where most of the men are favored job-wise than women. So that means a woman could probably be earning much less, and she has to cater for so many children. That means that the economic situation and lifestyle of these children is very needy, and so if the father was around, they'll be able to take care of them in a better way. So there's that economic issue, and then socially they're also stigmatized a lot. Such children, you find that it would be very hard for them to mingle with other children, and people always have this perception of if you're a single parent, it's probably because of your own making or it's because of some vices. And so they don't really like associating with children or parents who are single parents. So they also face a lot of rejection and stigma from society, sometimes from religious institutions or just other normal institutions. And so all this affects the child directly because they also have to deal with that sense of rejection from other people, and that can affect them.
And on to our last question, Madam Susan, what do you think is the best solution to this situation that we are facing as a country?
I think we should go back to revisiting our family values and our traditional values, where we believe that children could be brought up by a society. Sometimes the issue of single parenting are unavoidable, but I think if we are able to enculture in people and in society and in children some of these basic values about the respect for life, for example, valuing each child, even if they're not your child, it is your responsibility to make sure that they grow up with good values, and also encouraging our young people through a lot of psychoeducation and campaign to respect the values of marriage. Yes, it may not have been modeled to them, but they can be taught. They can be taught in schools, they can be taught in churches, they can be taught in different groups, community groups, about faithfulness in marriage, that people need to stay committed to their partners. They also need to be responsible parents and bring up their children well and not abandon their children, and also be able to be responsible members of the society. I think these are things and values that we can cultivate in young people. We can teach them, we can talk to them about them, and hopefully in their generation they will grow up respecting marriage and family as an institution, so that we with time we start avoiding the issue of single parenting. And even for the single parents, I think our institutions like the churches and the government, they should be able to embrace these people and care for them and care for their needs. If they are doing that, then the single parents will not be, modeling immoral behavior. They will be able to really model good behavior to their children. And it's not all single parents who are prone to immorality. There are good single parents who are very good examples to society. But I think sometimes the perception that people create about them is what makes it difficult for them to be assisted. So I think we should learn to love them and embrace them and help them where we can.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Susan Bottle, for joining us live in our studio. And on to our last developing story of the day. Whether rich or poor, the justice system is meant to be fair. The Kenyan justice system has witnessed various cases of crime that have ended with bail and bonds release. This begs the question of, is our justice system money-powered? Our correspondent has the latest on this.
Kenya has witnessed various crime cases that got released on bond and bail, such as the NY scandal, the National Cereals and Produce Board scandal, Kenya Power scandal, Rio scandal, Governor Obado murder and corruption charges, among others. According to a statement by the President of Kenya's Supreme Court, Justice William Mutunga, he admitted the legal system was ill-equipped and marred with corruption to tackle the problems. This situation leaves many cases of crime to go uninvestigated, while those without money or power to go behind bars. The big question is our justice system fair or money-driven?
So I think that the judicial system, it's a twist though. On one aspect, yes, it's true that there's a lot of cases that are dropped. After watching many programs by 254 and Africa Uncensored, you get to realize that some people, for example, battery, domestic violence, a lot of cases in the court are dropped because men go and bribe the judiciary system to let go of the cases. And so I think that complacency in the judicial system has led to an allowance of some sorts for women to be treated in a particular way and for men to dominate the society, which is very wrong, because now in a society where we're changing and we're trying to establish leadership roles for women, it's really messed up. So I think in that essence, the judicial system is supporting such situation. But also on the other hand, after you listen to the judicial system, I mean, if you've been in an organization where there's no resources, for example, in the recent past, in an organization that I'm associated with, there was no simple things like printing paper, the machines are not working and things like that. And so you start to ask yourself, we start to blame the people who run those particular facilities. After some time, you realize that it's not them to blame, it's a department above them that is to blame. And so of late we've been hearing situations on how the judicial system does not have enough finances, they have depleted their resources. And so you start to wonder, is this really a game of lack of resources in the judicial system, or is it really people compromising the system itself? It's a really hard option. It's either or. And so in all honesty, I believe that you have to be a part of the judicial system. You have to ask someone who's within the judicial system, who has chosen to be an integral person, a person who has chosen to defend the rights of the public, and then now ask them from their point of view, is it a matter of corruption or is it a matter of lack of resources? Because we all have faced all that, and I think that is my take on that situation.
And now joining us live on our studio is our chief correspondent. Tell us, What does the law say about the justice system in Kenya?
Well, according to the Kenyan law, the justice system is purely left to one arm of the government called the judiciary, whereby the judiciary, through its systems such as the courts, implements and interprets the law and actually ensures that everyone gets justice. And through that, you find that even if the law is purely written, whatever that happens on the ground is different. For instance, you find that many people go scot-free without actually finding justice. For instance, people who have big pockets are able to get away with cases, and therefore people never get justice as should be required by law.
All right, so do you think the justice system is unfair to the poor and fair to the rich people, as we've seen that getting away with the crimes committed?
Well, according to what is happening, especially in our country, you can clearly see that it's a man-eat-man society, whereby the people who are considered rich easily get away with crimes. For instance, you find that a person who has stolen chicken is jailed for 12 years, whereas a person who has stolen billions and millions of public money are left scot-free and released on bonds and bails. And there are so many cases in history that actually highlight the same. So you find that in Kenya, in the justice system, as per the situation currently, people who have money get away easily and are able to buy justice. And it's quite unfortunate.
All right, thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us live in the studio. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast today. Thank you for joining us and staying with us all this time. But before I leave, I would like to leave you with a quote that says, your limitation is only your imagination. So you have to dream big, think big, and imagine big. And you can imagine what can happen. That is the end of today's news. Be sure to stay tuned because the conversation does not end here on the Specs News. We continue on our social media handles on Facebook, on Twitter, at ITV24, the hashtag is Specs News. You can also tag me along at Yar Ajakding. Until next time, be sure to stay tuned on ITV24.